Okay, so welcome everybody to the Daily Mail. And I'm really honored, super honored today to have a wonderful cousin, actually a very distant cousin, distant in many ways because you're talking to me from the University of Calgary, Dr. Morley Hollenberg. Welcome to the Daily Mail
Thank you. Thank you.
and happy Hanukkah to everybody.
Happy Hanukkah for sure. Keep those lights burning. Yeah.
So Morley, this Facebook Live is to celebrate Jews and Judaism and to fight anti-Semitism by telling the world all the positive things about Jews and Jewish people.
Okay.
And today we're celebrating the Jewish doctor.
Okay. Thank you very
And
much.
you're a doctor, but not only are you a doctor and my distant cousin, but you are a is there a word in English? Scion? Is there a word like that? You're a descendant of a family of wonderful Jewish people from now from Canada, originally
Yes.
from Europe, and most of you are physicians, and some of you are world famous researchers.
So it all started with my grandparents' move to North America. They first settled in Newdorf, Saskatchewan, where they thought they were going to breed cattle, but that didn't work. So they started a general store in this small town in Saskatchewan and then moved to Winnipeg, where the family grew. And it was actually my grandmother who insisted that everybody go to university. So all of her 7 children, the 5 boys and 2 girls, went to university. And it was the oldest, Abe, who thought that medicine would be the place that they could thrive. And so he started, and all the 5 brothers went to medical school. The 2 sisters also got university degrees. One became a manager of a pharmacist. The other became a manager of what became the Hollenberg Clinic in Winnipeg that existed for a while, that was put together by the 5 brothers. So that's the kind of background. And so the medical stream may have started in the old country. There are some information that people might have been associated with medicine, but the group that we're talking about now, starting with my family and going forward, basically started in Winnipeg.
So it was your grandfather, Moses Hollenberg,
Right,
who is related to me through
right,
my grandmother, who was Bella Hollenberg,
right,
and her dad was Nehemiah Hollenberg,
right.
um, and I'm always trying to get this correct. So Nehemiah and Moses were brothers, something like that. And
Yeah,
and so my great grandfather was your great uncle or something like that.
something like that. Yeah.
And
If you, yeah,
you've credited your grandfather and also your grandmother Sarah.
yes,
There was some reason, Morley, that the whole mishpoche became. I mean, almost everybody, the 5 boys,
yeah,
certainly all went to medical school in an
that's right.
era in which it was very difficult to get into a
Yeah, there
medical
was some
school if
kind,
you were
yeah,
Jewish in Canada.
yes. There was some kind of quota, and both my dad and my mother went to the medical school. That's where they met, and that's another story.
So there
But
were five. There were five. Your dad and 4 other brothers
correct.
all became the Hollenberg doctors,
That is correct.
and
And my
they
mother,
were
yeah,
Abe,
my mother,
Mike, Joe, Charlie, Jake,
yeah, Jake was the youngest of
and your
the
daddy.
brothers. Was my father, yes. All right.
So Morley, is this a Jewish gene? Well, what's going on here?
Well, there must be some kind of a leaning. It would be hard to do the genetics, but it turns out that my generation, so the sons and daughters of the 5 brothers, a lot of them also became physicians, and children also became physicians. My cousin Tony's now head of medicine in Boston at Boston University, and so a number of the sons and daughters also became physicians, and their children became physicians, or somehow associated with not medical practice, but for instance, my son was involved with the Royal College here in Canada in putting together physicians who were practicing regular medicine with those practicing herbal medicines. And so he was working with the Royal College on that. My daughter is working at community mental health, working in the area of kind of a research assistant for studies in the area of mental health. So there's some connection there. And one of my cousins became a hospital administrator, Frankie, who lives in Toronto. So he was the son of one of my uh, my aunts. So there seems to be some kind of link somehow. I'm not sure what the opening is. And then uh,
And
so
we didn't even mention Norman Hollenberg, the son of
yeah, so
Sonia and
that
Irving Hollenberg, who also became a very famous physician researcher in Boston.
right. And he's more closely related to you in that with
He well, he's actually he's your
he's
uncle and he's your
my
second
second cousin.
cousin. That when we met, we should tell everybody that we met by accident at a meeting in Belgium.
Yeah. It
When
was
I
at
saw
a
that your name was Hollenberg and you were from Canada, I went up to you and I said, Morley, we're related. If you're a physician and your name is Hollenberg, and you said to me, well, Rosenberg, Hollenberg, and I said, well, do you have an uncle Irving
yeah,
and Auntie Sonia? And you
yeah,
said, yeah. And I said, well, and their son Norman Hollenberg. He says, and you said, yeah, he's my cousin. I said, well, he's my cousin too. And
there
then
you
we got
go.
on the phone with my late father, who explained everything to us.
Yeah,
And it turned out incredibly that maybe we share 2% of our genome,
yeah,
but we're both into medical research. And I play saxophone, and your son plays saxophone, and you love jazz. It was crazy.
yeah.
And then we also discovered your wonderful artwork,
Okay.
your your art
Brushwork, yeah, Chinese
brushwork.
brushwork. Yeah, that's a very new development, relatively
So
speaking,
just
yes.
move your head so everybody can see it.
Yeah,
And every Yontif, you send us some of your beautiful work, and we love it.
okay.
We'll talk about that another time. But we're talking. We want to concentrate now on your day job.
Sure.
So what we're celebrating today, you and I, the Jewish doctor.
Okay.
Why do you think we have this propensity that we want to send our children to medical school and that we hold anything in medicine to be in high regard, including research? Does this date back to Maimonides? Is it something in our code of ethics? What is it?
Well, from my perspective, um, the vision is to make this world a better place when you leave it than what you found when you came here. And that has been in me for whatever reason for a long time. And my dream has been to discover something that would reduce somebody's suffering. That hasn't quite happened in the way I thought it might happen, but I've contributed a lot, and there's a basis to minimize the suffering of people with inflammation disease. So I think it's that I don't know the Jewish thing, but you leave this place better than when you came.
We call it tikkun olam. It's our
Yes. Yeah, tikkun olam. Yeah, exactly. So that somehow is rooted in me, and I think that's probably where it comes from. Um, and so that would be my own drive. Yeah, and
if you were
that's rooted. Yeah, that's rooted in our ethic. Yeah.
in Judaism, human life has a great value.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
it says that I'll say it in Hebrew and then translate. Misha metzil nefesh echad b'Yisrael, kilu itzil olam kulo. I'm paraphrasing. Whoever saves a life, it's as if he saved an entire world.
Yeah, if you save one life, you save the whole world. Exactly. Exactly. So I think that principle which comes through is well, it's embedded in the Jewish religion. It is there in many other religions of the same kind of way. So that's what I would have as the answer to your question.
Okay, so Morley, I didn't. I'm going to pop this upon you.
Yeah.
In addition to Maimonides, who is considered a great Jewish sage and physician of the Middle Ages, if I were to ask you to name a physician, a Jewish physician that you hold in very high regard, not necessarily a Hollenberg.
Okay.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Is there anybody that you have in mind from your
Yes.
career?
Yes, Paul Ehrlich.
Okay. And why would that be?
Well, he founded a number of very basic principles. He discovered the first cure for syphilis. He had to face issues because he was Jewish, and he survived and thrived, and he's one of the people I have as a picture in front of my desk where he's sitting there with all his files stacked up to the ceiling. And so he has been an idol of mine for some time. He invented pharmacology and he invented immunology in his way. And he was caring of his patients because it was trying to help his patients that drove him to discover how you could stain organisms and etc. So one
And
person.
how did he cure syphilis, Morley?
Well, he realized that a number of dyes could stain microorganisms, and he eventually found that and he discovered the organism that causes syphilis, and he eventually discovered that an arsenical dye could stain the syphilis organism and it could kill it. It was a mercurial, and it was a 606 compound, 606 was the compound that he did. So he did a lot of work to do that. And
The bullet.
yes, so it was the origin of the magic bullet, if you will.
So
It didn't.
Paul Ehrlich deserves a lot. We talked on this. I'm going to call it a program for a minute because I don't know what to call it. It's my daily ranting
Okay.
for the good Jews. And I talked about Waxman and streptomycin, but Paul Ehrlich was like the grandfather of all this.
Yes,
he
he
envisioned.
laid. Yes, he laid the pathway. Absolutely, yeah.
So that's wonderful, and that I didn't anticipate that, and that's a wonderful answer.
Yeah.
Morley, if I were to ask you to describe your work in a few sentences to
Okay.
somebody who's not a scientist or a physician,
Okay.
can you do that?
Yes. So, I started out in a laboratory that invented the way insulin is known to work. And so insulin sticks itself on the outside of a cell, sends a signal to the inside of a cell, and then everything happens. Based on that vision, I got interested in the problem of inflammation. So anything that ends in an itis, colitis, arthritis, gingivitis, is an inflammatory disease. That's what the itis means. And I stumbled on, it's not the, and so the place where insulin sticks is called the insulin receptor. So the receptor is the part of the cell that's looking out into the environment for signals that the body sends to it. And through my work, I stumbled on a kind of receptor that's activated by digestive enzymes that are in the environment. So a digestive enzyme chops up proteins, and that's the way you get food into your body. But digestive enzymes also work like mini hormones in the outside of the cell. So I began studying the way digestive enzymes signal to the inside of the cell. And anytime there's an inflammatory process in your skin or in your kidney or in your liver, these digestive enzymes get put out into the space outside the cell, and they trigger a signal that says, you better start healing, and I'm giving you the signal. The way I would explain it is when you cut your finger, two things happen at once. First, you feel pain. So your pain nerves are stimulated. Second point is you start to bleed. It turns out that your pain nerves send out a signal that tells the system to start healing itself. And then the way the blood clots, there's an enzyme that's activated in your bloodstream called thrombin. So it's there to make the scab that heals your cut. So that's a kind of insult or inflammatory response. And the activation of digestive enzymes in the blood clotting system, the activation of thrombin, talks to the cell and tells the cell there's damage here, gets a signal inside, and the cell starts to heal. So that's part of the inflammatory response, and you can extend that to other places. When there's a tumor growing, the tumor puts out an enzyme that's not thrombin itself, but can activate the same things that thrombin does. And it turns out there's a family of these receptors that has four kind of brothers and sisters that's looking for enzymes outside the cell to tell it what's going on. And in the setting of inflammation, more of these enzymes get produced. They act on your nerves and they act on the cells to tell them that there's damage here. You better start to heal. But if it goes overboard and doesn't stop, then you get a lot of inflammation. So the dream was to throw a monkey wrench into this process to stop the inflammation, stop the signaling, and that could stop the inflammation. And in some respects, that's worked out. I'll give you an example of where our work has gone just recently. So multiple sclerosis is a degenerative disease that affects the covering of the nerves. And people with multiple sclerosis, it turns out it's a puzzle what the disease is. There are many flavors of it. But it turns out that in a model of multiple sclerosis, you can immunize a mouse to the coverings of its nerves, and it then develops paralysis. So that's kind of a multiple sclerosis model in a mouse. And in that setting, we found that if the mouse does not have one of these receptors that looks at the proteolytic enzymes, it's the number 2 receptor in the family, that its multiple sclerosis isn't so bad. So recently we thought, well, if you could get a blocker of that, quote, it's called a receptor, that place that's looking, if you could block the signal of that receptor when the enzyme activates it, maybe you could minimize the disease. And so we have a manuscript just coming out. We're treating the mouse that would get paralysis with a blocker of the system, doesn't get so much paralysis. What we don't know is whether, if the mouse has the disease to begin with, and you give the blocker, can the disease minimize itself? So that's kind of a place where it went. Would that be a cure for multiple sclerosis? It might turn out to be management. We don't know. And since multiple sclerosis is such a heterogeneous disease with many causes, it might work only in a subset of individuals. So that in words that I think are readily understood explains how looking at inflammation, anything with an itis, and looking at some of the basic fire that gets lit in the setting of inflammation, that we've been aiming to quench the fire. That's pretty well describes where the work has been going.
Okay, that's a major contribution. So
thank you.
so Morley, you are a descendant of a long-standing tradition of Tikkun Olam, and
Okay.
I don't know whether it was luck or providence that brought us together in Brussels at an alcohol conference
Yeah. Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
over 20 years ago. But I must say that the more I learn about your mishpoche and about the Hollenbergs, the more I am honored to be a distant part of it.
Well, don't overlook that you too have an essence of that gene, because you did work and focused on a major, I would call it itis, that leads to, bad breath.
Yeah, okay,
And
but this is about you, Morley, not about me.
okay, no, but what I'm saying that is
I
that
no, that's a whole separate question. You know, what leads us
yeah, so
to
there's a whole genetic kind of component that seems to respond to
I
whatever it
don't
is.
know, and now I have a nephew, my brother David's son Daniel, who's a physician.
There you
Uh,
go.
I don't know, so I don't know whether this is, you know, like for Jewish mothers, having a child who goes to medical school is a wonderful thing, and for our tradition it is. And you know, there's a term, a Jewish doctor. It has some meaning in society,
Okay.
and we've talked about your career. We've talked about the marvelous Hollenbergs, heroes of Western Winnipeg in medicine, Western Canada, and also throughout Canada. I was speaking to my friend in Toronto. He says, of course, the Hollenberg Clinic, it was famous. My dad worked with them in the 1950s. So you have a whole huge tradition. And our
Yeah.
tradition goes back to Maimonides and farther back to the Bible of the Jewish ethic of trying to make the world a better place.
I think that's the central theme. I think that's the central theme.
So,
Tikkun Olam.
Morley, I want to thank you for your friendship. I
Oh,
want to thank whoever was responsible for introducing us at
well,
that meeting.
you know the word beshert. So
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah.
And
So it
and
was
and I'll tell you another thing. It's being open, because I had a similar experience at a conference where I met Mickey Hollenberg, who was in San Francisco for quite some time, and he was walking down the waterfront, and I saw his name, and because of the name, started talking, and there you go. However, there is also a large clan with a family name who are not Jewish at all, and so if you just go into, I
really
don't
maybe
know,
they're Jewish and they don't know they're Jewish.
um, I don't think so,
You know,
because
and we're not even Hollenbergs.
well, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
The
That
original name is
there-
Hoffer. It's a whole mice. It's a whole story. And my name isn't Rosenberg. It's Riesenberg.
yeah,
But for the purposes of our discussion today,
yeah. Yeah.
um, if
So
you
there is a strong Jewish clan, but there's also a broad non-Jewish clan, because the name was assumed to escape uh, conscription, and there's a Hollenberg wine or something like that in Germany, whatever it is. So the Jewish Hollenberg gene does run true, but there's also another one, and I don't know how many with the other who are not Jewish are physicians, but that's another story. Yeah.
And maybe they're Jewish and they don't know it.
Well, I don't know. If you do the genes, we're all related anyway.
But I'm really honored to be related to you, Morley. So keep well and stay in touch and keep up your wonderful artwork.
Well, thank you. And
And
the admiration is mutual.
you're a real mensch.
Thank you.
And my love to the whole extended Hollenberg mishpoche.
Okay. And to you as well. Just to have the link to continue as long as we're able to see each other, email each other, talk to each other. Amazing. Just wonderful. It's
It's
wonderful.
really a wonderful pleasure to know you, Morley.
It's
So,
totally,
a big gesund
totally
and
mutual. Okay. Absolutely.
take care.
Thank you so
Shalom.
much. Shalom. So you'll send me that my wife could look at the interview. Thank you.
Morley, not only your wife, the whole world can look at the interview.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
Love you.
All right, Mel. Thank you so much.
Bye.
We'll keep in touch for sure.